Okay, Jane.
Thank you, Hugh.
Great.
Okay, good afternoon, members. Councillor Chris, we can start the meeting.
Thank you, Jane. Prynhawn da pawb. Good afternoon all. My name is Councillor Chris Hughes and I am the Chair of Social Care and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome everyone to today's meeting where we are all attending remotely. In addition to committee members, we will also have non-committee members, cabinet members and officers joining us to assist in our discussions. For those viewing the live stream, the recording, committee members are identified with an asterisk next to their name. The meeting will be recorded and live streamed and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available and to choose your language of choice. If you wish to speak, please use the raised hand function. You can also use the chat facility. All microphones will be muted. If you have indicated your intention to speak, you will be invited to turn your microphone on. If you leave your device for any reason, can you please ensure that you are muted and that you turn your video off? Thank you. Right, moving on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Jane, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Just one apology from Councillor Dave Roberts.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Sorry, Chair, this is Councillor Louise. I didn't get my hand raised early enough. Councillor Cheryl Carlisle can't be with us today. A problem with one of her family members.
Oh dear.
Noted, please.
Okay. Right, thank you for that, Louise.
Yeah.
So, are there any declarations of interest?
I've gone in to say.
Go ahead, Councillor Roger.
I live in Dinnerth Road.
Dinnerth Road, okay. Are there any other declarations of interest? No? Right, then we will move on to item 3, which is urgent matters. I'm not aware of any, Jane?
There are no urgent matters,
There are no
Chair.
urgent matters, thank you. And we move on to item 4, which is the minutes. To approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of September, which can be found on pages 4 to 13. Can somebody propose that they're a correct record? Oh, James, are you proposing or do you have an issue with the minutes?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, James. And can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Right. Can members please show their hands to approve the minutes? 7.
That's carried. Thank you,
Looks
Chair.
like it's carried. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Item 5, to review the forward work programme for the Social Care and Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the combined forward work programme, which can be found on pages 14 to 61. As Dawn Hughes has given her apologies as chair, can I advise of the following changes to the forward work programme, which I have agreed with officers. The Conway and Denbighshire Joint Adoption Panel annual report and the Corporate Parenting annual report have been deferred from the 24th of November meeting to the 5th of January. Therefore, we will have just one item on the agenda for the meeting on the 24th of November, which is an update from the Cabinet member for children and families and safeguarding. Can I also advise that the Audit Wales follow-up report on social services budgetary and cost pressures commissioning placements, which was due to go to a joint social care and finance and resources scrutiny committee, has, at the request of the Audit Commission, been deferred until the end of November, as the report is still in its draft format. Yeah. I'm not sure if I can help, but if anyone has any questions on the forward work programme, I will certainly try and assist. Does anyone have any questions on the two issues that I've just raised? No? Okay, then can somebody propose that we accept the forward work programme? Thank you, Liz. And the seconder, Aaron. Can members now show their hands that they agree with the forward work programme? That looks like a majority to me.
Yep, thank you, members.
Thank you, everyone. That's carried. Item 6, questions to cabinet members. None received, I believe.
There are no questions.
Thank you, Jane. And item 7, to consider a report by the Chief Executive on the following matter. Corporate Safeguarding Board Annual Report 2020-2021, which will be presented by Rhiannon Lloyd, the Services Manager for Safeguarding, and can be found on pages 62 to 81 of your agenda. Right, so is Rhiannon with us?
Rhiannon is with us. Oh, here she is, Chair.
I am. Thank you, Councillor Chris. Pnawn da pawb. Afternoon. As Councillor Chris said, I'm Rhiannon Lloyd, the Service Manager for Safeguarding in Social Care. So I'll work through the report and provide an overview of the activities that we've undertaken during the last financial year for 2020-2021. So the report starts with an introduction and a reminder that safeguarding is everyone's business and how each department in the council has a key role to play and must take ownership of the safeguarding agenda. The annual report provides assurance that corporate safeguarding arrangements are working effectively in Conway and that each department is committed to the corporate safeguarding. So to provide a little bit of background, the corporate safeguarding policy was implemented following Cabinet approval back in July 2014. And since 2018, our Chief Exec, Mr. Ewan Davies, has chaired the board, which supports the appropriate strategic level. Every service area of the council has a role to play and must take full ownership of their safeguarding responsibilities. The council expects every member of the workforce to take all reasonable steps to ensure the safety of any child or adults at risk involved in council activity or indeed within the community. So the board's aim is to support the council to develop a positive, preventative and a proactive approach in safeguarding across the whole council. So the corporate safeguarding policy was updated in June last year, 2020, to comply with the requirement of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act and also the Wales Safeguarding Procedures 2019. It's positive to report that most departments are represented appropriately at both the Corporate Safeguarding Board and or the Designated Safeguarding Managers Group meeting. So the Designated Safeguarding Managers are referred to as DSMs going forward, are the responsible operational management leads for safeguarding matters within each department of the council and successfully deliver on this corporate priority. So the DSM meetings continue to take place bi-monthly, and we do have a standing agenda which looks at national, regional and local development, also reviewing the corporate safeguarding action plan and also provide each service area provide an individual departmental update in relation to safeguarding. So this report here, we found ourselves in a worldwide pandemic. While the pandemic has shown how we can all pull together and support our communities, sadly, it also means that due to lockdown restrictions and the reduced visibility on vulnerable people in and around our community settings, abuse and neglect can be harder to identify. Whilst at the same time living under tight restriction, socially isolated arrangements increase the relationship pressure that can contribute to abuse and neglect or allow it to go unseen. There are also indicators that the condition caused by COVID and the pandemic have heightened the vulnerability of children and young people to certain types of abuse. So, for example, online abuse, abuse within the home, criminal and child sexual exploitation. So referral rates evidence that in Conwy during the pandemic, exploitation of children continued to rise, as did domestic abuse and incidents of challenging behaviour within families. There's also been an increase in the number of alleged abuse and reports of domestic abuse involving adult safeguarding, plus an increase in financial abuse offences and arrests. And also online scamming also took place in this reporting period. So the normal safeguards that we rely on to protect children and young people and adults at risk were reduced during the pandemic, with very limited opportunities for social interaction or face-to-face contact with professionals. So the DSM group suggested that we developed a safeguarding video, which was led by our portfolio holder, Councillor Cheryl, and the video promoted that safeguarding is everyone's business, and you should not ignore your concerns or assume that someone else will report concerns about possible abuse. This video had over 16,500 hits on social media, and subsequently we did experience an increase in safeguarding reports to social care. We also, during the pandemic, had safeguarding highlighted within the corporate and social care briefings and in the postmaster statements throughout the pandemic. And also by September 2020, we had returned to pre-COVID numbers in relation to safeguarding reports for both children and adults. We did during this period increase the frequency of our DSM's meetings, and we held 7 meetings in this reporting period. And also the board maintained their quarterly meeting, which provide updates or given in relation to COVID, the situation within Conwy and our corporate safeguarding action plan. So if I just move on to our corporate action plan, has 4 key areas, and that's the learning and development, safeguarding priorities, safe recruitment and safeguarding framework. So in relation to our key area number 1, which is the learning and development, in June 2019, the Wales Audit General reviewed our corporate arrangements and recommended that we must accelerate our compliance in relation to training. So there are 3 e-learning modules available through the NHS Learning Portal, which the Corporate Safeguarding Board requires employees to complete. And that is the violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence. So I'll probably be referring to the VAWDW SV herein, safeguarding and modern slavery. So in December 2020, our safeguarding e-learning module was reviewed and redesigned. And we actually received positive feedback from another local authority, Caerphilly, and they've asked for us to share our slides and training in relation to that. So it is 3 years since we introduced the e-learning module, and since early this year, corporate HR sent through bi-monthly reports to managers of those staff who need to renew their training. The VAWDW SV training is mandated by the Welsh Government, and as of the 31st of March, we had a completion of 59% of permanent staff and 28% of all staff had completed this training. This actually coincided with a 3-year refresher training, and we recognised the need to increase the compliance rate amongst permanent and casual staff. In relation to our safeguarding training e-learning, as of the 31st of March, we had 80% of permanent staff and 39% of staff had completed their online training. And in relation to modern slavery, as of the 31st of March, again, we'd seen a slight increase with 83% of permanent staff and 38% of all staff having completed the training. Whilst we are committed in ensuring compliance in training amongst all staff, it must be recognised that there has been significant challenges associated with the pandemic, as staff have had additional workloads and have needed to prioritise other work, all of which has continued towards the performance outcome. Safeguarding training in schools continue to be delivered via the Hub platform. All mandatory training records are being transferred currently into iTrent to enable better reporting and auditing. All designated safeguarding persons in school continue to receive enhanced safeguarding training, which covers a whole range of different subjects. We also, during this reporting period, saw the launch of the Wales safeguarding procedures. So in readiness for the implementation, which was last September 2020, we had to implement a significant amount of training, and this was delivered beforehand. And also we promoted where we could the Wales Safeguarding Procedures app alongside our virtual training. We also held a development day, and that was during Safeguarding Week last November, where we were fortunate to have Nasir Afzal talk about his experience in relation to exploitation. And as this conference was held virtual, it allowed us to open the invitation to key partners, and we actually had over 130 delegates at the conference. Last year, I reported that our safeguarding training framework would be a priority. However, due to officers working within COVID response, we haven't been able to progress this as much as we'd like to. So we have resumed this work, and it is a priority going forward. In relation to safeguarding priorities, one of the key areas was embedding the child and adults at risk process. So training had been co-produced, provided by the safeguarding unit in relation to the procedures to ensure capacity for effective managerial oversight and joint appreciation of the child and adults at risk process. The training provided in-depth learning in relation to the practical elements of interpreting the volume 6, which is around handling individual cases, and the Wales safeguarding procedures. There has been developmental work in this reporting year concerning the specific process of managing children and adult safeguarding. Our new electronic system, the Welsh Continuum Care Information System, we refer to as WCIS, has been designed to ensure clear recording against processes. We've also, between social care and health, developed a process to ensure all safeguards are implemented effectively when in the pre-birth child protection process. And in adult safeguarding, the initial strategy and strategy review meetings have been redesigned to ensure that it's compliant with the ethos and requirements of the procedures. We also developed a visual process map for the point of receiving the safeguarding report, and to ensure that practitioners have access to how the procedures, our wikis and our organisational structure respond to safeguarding. There is a focus on ensuring professionals achieve outcome-focused safeguarding with adults at risk or their representative. In addition, the development of the form within wikis has been explicit in the need to ensure that the individual's voice is central. And in the drive to continue to work collaboratively with families under the principle of the Act, risks need to be managed confidently, as well as ensuring that the child's voice is heard throughout the process. Invitation letters are routinely sent to young people over 10 years of age. We have ensured that the agenda for the Child Protection Case Conferences records the child's voice, wishes and feelings, and that these are captured by the social worker, advocate or young person who's in attendance. Also, Prevent, which is Home Office guidance in relation to contest and prevent, asked the local authority to develop a delivery action plan describing their statutory duties. So we have identified a lead prevent officer responsible for reporting to both our Corporate Safeguarding Board and our DSM's meeting, and the action plan has also been developed. So moving on to domestic abuse. So Conway's continue to ensure that staff comply with the mandatory training. So to assist with the compliance, the DSM meeting continued to monitor progress on this. And as part of Conwy's commitment to Bawdw it was agreed during this reporting period to offer all DSMs an opportunity to receive level 2 Ask and Act training. This would increase their knowledge and understanding and also enable them to consider the Bawdw within the context of their service. Also during this period, a domestic abuse multi-agency group has been formed with agency represented from the local authority, third sector, North Wales Police, health and wider. And the group initially sought to understand the resources that individuals that are experiencing domestic abuse can access and to ensure professionals can provide the relevant information, advice and assistance from a think family approach. A risk was raised with the board that the training delivery model put together by Welsh Government required co-delivery with in-house trainers, which were not available in the corporate learning and development team. So we reached an agreement, and social care workforce development and the corporate training for members of the workforce development team to deliver Ask and Act level 2 corporately to those staff whose role required them to attend the training. So during this reporting period, we delivered level 2 Ask and Act training to 290 employees. And I believe we're one of the highest that's managed to deliver this to date as a local authority. In relation to safe recruitment is a key area and progress has been made towards having one central database for volunteers. So having volunteers detail held centrally will assist towards ensuring that each department where a volunteer is volunteering is invited to and is involved in the Section 5 Position of Trust strategy meeting when the needs arise. Training for volunteers is important, as well as an appropriate induction process. The same standards should be in place as and when recruiting paid employees. So some volunteers have already accessed the e-learning modules for all 3 modules. So moving on to the safeguarding framework, the corporate internal audit team carried out their 3rd follow-up audit and their final report in August 2019. It was reassessed as providing satisfactory assurance. The follow-up audit demonstrated that key controls are in place, but highlighted some areas which expose the authority to risk, such as the mandatory training compliance. So this report can evidence some improvement. However, it must be acknowledged that due to the priorities associated with the pandemic, we have not maintained the trajectory that we had previously reported in previous years. So in regards to performance measure M21, we actually achieved 100% on that, which is staff commencing in post with 2 reference, and also the same for M2.2, which is around staff that needed to have a DBS check. And again, we did achieve 100% compliance on that measure. So in regards to M2,
show me dogs. Okay.
in regards to M2.3, the percentage of employees completing the corporate induction within appropriate timescale, we had 65% of employees completed their induction within the 3 months, and 93% had completed the corporate induction since starting with Conwy in this reporting year. So due to the pandemic and restrictions, we were not in a position to deliver our induction in a face-to-face environment. We introduced a process where a welcome email with information relating to the corporate induction and content is sent to new starters. So M2.4 is disappointed to see the decline in this measure. There is 2 likely factors contributed to this low outturn, and demands on the employee and the need to hit the ground running. We're also mindful that some frontline employees receive training face-to-face, which was stopped at the beginning of the pandemic. Managers have been reminded as part of the employee's probationary review to ensure mandatory modules are completed. M2.5 is around compulsory training for our elected members. So elected members have undertaken the training. However, we have some members who need to complete their 3-year refresher. As it was reported that there was difficulty with the portal, we did offer from social care that elected members could attend the All Wales Basic Awareness Refresher. So I'm not sure, to date, I don't think that's offer's been acted on so far. M2.6 is around the number of referrals from staff who are concerned about vulnerable people. So there's 2 sets of data here, one from Paris, our previous client information system, and also for Wikis, a new one going forward. So between the periods of 1st of April and the 23rd of November, we'd received 916 reports from Paris. This consists of 43 adults and 873 children. And from the 24th of November to the 31st of March, we received a total of 269 safeguarding reports in Wikis. This consists of 9 adults and 260 children. So as part of this data gathering, we have identified that further work is required to accurately report on adult safeguarding. The report source is not being recorded in all cases. So it's highly probable that we have underreported due to this issue, and we are continuing, certainly within social care, to improve our reporting system to ensure that we are accurately and confidently reporting. So I then provide a number of good practice examples from a corporate perspective in relation to safeguarding. So within social care, we have continued with the Children and Adult Safeguarding Forum throughout the pandemic, and the purpose of this is to provide all managers with the opportunity to keep abreast of all relevant updates in relation to safeguarding managers. Our colleagues in education, social work service have been key in providing the intrinsic link between home and schools, particularly when schools have been closed, and a massive role that is expected in terms of safeguarding and welfare check-ins. Lots of doorstep visits of those identified as vulnerable have taken place. Their role has been to ensure that any risk and vulnerabilities are addressed and managed. This has been extremely successful by working with families in a different way, ensuring they have food parcels, computers, access to welfare rights, engaging and encouraging them to link in with other services, as well as getting them prepared for a return to school. Some schools in Conway are starting to use My Concerns, which is a system linked to the School Information Management System, SIMS, to record welfare and safeguarding concerns. In relation to an adult safeguarding, was contacted by Track, Trace and Protect advisor to say they had made a telephone call to a household in relation to track and trace matter. The advisor explained that following a discussion with the man he had contacted, he was concerned about the other individuals in the home. So through additional work, it was identified that 2 individuals lived in a shared life scheme, and both individuals were open to adult social care through the over 25 disability team. Information was shared with the duty manager of the social work team, and they planned to make a duty call, and they would report any further safeguardings. The Information and Technology Department now undertake DBS for staff who work within schools. The Leisure Service have made arrangements with the Wales Link Officer for DBS service to deliver training to sport coaches as part of the safe recruitment. Social Care initiated and participated in a multi-agency practice leads pilot, which was facilitated by the Child Sexual Abuse Centre of Excellence. And we had 3 DSMs engaged in this programme. Play development team have been working through lockdown with Family First managers, offering one-to-one session with families. Economy and Culture Service reported that they were updating the child protection policy. This will now include safeguarding procedures for children who are performing in the theatre. Regulatory Service reported that they had to, they increased their temporary accommodation households from 139 to 200, with 500 individuals in temporary accommodation. And there's been a fantastic effort by staff to increase accommodation and provide support. 3.7 of my report provides you an overview of the plethora of activities that we undertook during Safeguarding Week. And that was overview of the procedures. We did a number of 7-minute briefing. Some were child related, some were adult related, some were linking into COVID. We hosted our exploitation conference, and further 7-minute briefings were held on the Thursday and Friday. We also, during that week, displayed on the desktop a daily postmaster messages were shared, and safeguarding continues to be a standing agenda item on the majority of service team meetings across the council. So to conclude, I hope this report provides you with the assurance that safeguarding does remain a priority for us here in Conway. Thank you. I have got 2 colleagues with me here in case there are some questions from yourselves. I've got Cheryl Roberts from our corporate HR and Sian Pinner from Education Service as well. So between us, hopefully we can answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Rhiannon, thank you. Right, so open the debate up, and I'll take Councillor Liz Roberts first, and followed by Councillor Frank Bradfield.
Well, Rhiannon, you've demonstrated to us today the volume of work that you have as a manager to do in safeguarding. And I really appreciate what you've shared with us today. Ideally, we could spend a whole day on this as an invaluable training session for members, because you discussed so much, but for us to really understand how much work goes into all of this, a whole day's training on it would be absolutely wonderful. I'm not pressurizing you to do it, but it would be something I think would be really valuable. I'm also pleased to hear that the indices for safeguarding have been raised, because it demonstrates the county is vigilant to concerns raised, but it gives you one heck of a lot of work to do. I know from sitting on the fostering panel, the amount of work, and especially now working with connected persons, which I think is such hard work. So I praise all the work that gets done. I'm really disappointed that members weren't invited to attend Nadir Azal's presentation, because I know what an excellent speaker he is. And if any opportunity ever arises again, I'd like to think that members could have an invite, because unless you want to come in there.
I think there was an invitation that went out. I'm not sure if it went to everybody, but we did have some elected members on the conference.
Oh, I missed out on that. Okay. With training, yes, I think the actual participation rate could be better than what it is. But I know with COVID and everything that's happened these last 2 years, it's been very, very difficult. But compared to the sort of the numbers that you gave us today and the percentages, what's that like in comparison to previous years? Is there a big difference?
I think certainly, and Cheryl probably be able to answer this better than myself, but it's coincided at the end of this reporting year, that 3 years. So what happens is that the names actually gets removed from the reporting period, which is right. So Cheryl, can you respond a bit more than myself around that?
Yes, of course. Hi, councillors. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Cheryl Roberts. I'm the Corporate Organisation Development Manager with responsibility for learning and development. And what Rhiannon said is correct. I think, unfortunately, we got hit with bad timing. So it is, in terms of the Voucher SV module, it's 3 years since that was rolled out. And
Right.
as we answered, if someone rolls up to 3 years, they then drop off the completion list and they are required to renew their training. It's a Welsh Government requirement. And it just so happened that the end of that reporting period coincided with that 3-year renewal. So
Right.
actually we had around, in the previous period, we've got to around 80% completion for staff. But because it came to the renewal time, it completely dropped off. Also bearing in mind, like we answered, we have casual staff in particular that have that delivery through a face-to-face delivery, not on the e-learning platform. We haven't been able to train those people either because of the COVID restrictions. So it significantly dropped off that I actually had to go and double check the figure because I thought it was incorrect. Just to give you some reassurance, because I appreciate we're looking at the period that ends up to March 31st, but in the first quarter of this year, we're back up to 44%. So already increased nearly 20% in the first 3 months. So people are getting that training redone.
Oh, jolly good. I'm pleased to hear that. What else was I going to ask? Training with partners. I'm pleased to hear that that's going ahead. I'm really pleased because I think that's invaluable to do it with our partners. I attend the safeguarding training with schools, having responsibility as governor with safeguarding. But I do believe that the last one was cancelled, so I hope that another one comes up pretty soon. But I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed for all the work that you're doing. I think it's invaluable work, and to give us a whistle-top tour like you have this afternoon doesn't give you, how can I say, it doesn't present the amount of work that there is to do. So thank you very, very much indeed to all the team, all the corporate team that is working on this. Thank you.
Right. And Councillor Frank Bradfield.
Thank you, Chair. And from the off, can I say thanks to every individual who decides to take a career in social services. The work they do is invaluable, but it does carry an awful lot of responsibility and risk. I have 9 years experience in fighting for the rights of a child to be protected. So I have an awful lot of experience in safeguarding children and adults when it comes to that. The first risk, if I may be allowed, Chair, the first risk comes in page 65, where, and I agree with it, there's been an increase in the number of alleged abuses. I wouldn't say it's alleged, it's absolutely abuse. The abusive females and the abusive people living in restricted conditions that they can't go out is phenomenal, and it does have an effect on children. I go from paragraph 345 to paragraph 343, and the risk, as Rhiannon quite rightly says, the risk of child abuse is higher when the carers become overloaded with stresses in their lives. And indications are that the coronavirus pandemic has increased stress on the carers. So that is my first question. Is there going to be a backup plan for that? Because we don't want any reputation for our children being abused as what comes on our telly daily. The next point I would like to, with your indulgence, Chair, is the slavery. Now, I've attended, I think, 6 weeks of slavery, no, 9 weeks of slavery training with the Citizen Advice. And I'm all for that. It's despicable that this day and age that children are forced into slavery, that women are forced into prostitution and other despicable acts against their own quality of life. Now, it's pleasing that there's 83% of the staff attended training and the other councils are following our lead. That's brilliant. My question there is, what is the objective of this? I know it makes them aware, but how does the authority reduce the amounts of criminal activity in this field? And finally, Chair, we have 500 people, according to the report, that need houses. What support or what encouragement can be put on the house builders, the RSLs, like Chraffu, Conway, to build houses for these people. I mean, it's not natural to be living in hotels or bed and breakfast with a family. Families need to be alive. It's the quality of life that we give as children that make them the adults that society needs. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rhiannon. You don't know me, but we met years ago in this case of the potential for a child, and we wrote lovely emails to each other, and it did advance the case. So I do know you, although you don't know me. It's a pleasure to see you. All the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. Do you want to come back on Councillor Frank's comments at all?
Of course. So in regards to, you know, when we receive reports of abuse, obviously, you know, we have to take investigations and inquiries and, you know, provide support to that child, and it can be in various forms, you know, and it depends on the severity, doesn't it? You know, you've heard previously, you know, where we've had to, you know, remove children from their parents because of this, the nature of the concern, really. But, you know, wherever we can, we try and keep children at home and work with the family to go over their problems. So obviously, you know, I've highlighted around the online abuse and things, and that's about, you know, having safe resources out there that children are aware, and that's through education, you know, and advising them around, you know, safe internet use and everything to prevent them going down that route of being exploited or abused. So from Economist's perspective, we've got a lot of resources. We're very fortunate. We've got the family centres. We've got a number of services within children's services that we do deliver and provide a lot of support to families to be able to be living safely at home, and ultimately that's our aim, isn't it? In regards to the housing situation, I don't really know whether I can comment. I don't know if there's any other colleagues that can come in on that question.
No, doesn't seem as if there's anyone here from housing. I think that's a question, Frank. I think that's a question that's both close to both our hearts, but I think we need to take that up with housing or with the cabinet, with the leader who has the housing portfolio. Moving on then to Councillor Gronway. Councillor Gronway, you got your hand raised? Do you want to unmute?
It was to reply to Councillor Frank's question on the housing situation. We are in an extremely difficult position. We've got in a situation where we have little or no housing accommodation left at this current time. We had a special meeting yesterday to discuss the very subject, and we are looking at even closer working relationships with our RSLs to bring sites forward, especially sites that we own ourselves. One thing that does beguile me sometimes is when we do identify sites, key sites, there will be a lot of either member opposition or local opposition to actually building on these sites. So it is a difficult challenge. We are looking at our own sites, as we say. There's a special tasking punish group set up yesterday to try and move this forward with RSLs and with all partners, including the funding providers, to bring some land forward that we own to tackle some of these housing shortages.
Thank you, Gurley. Any other questions? Councillor Roger, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. Page 67. Domestic violence continues to be the highest referral, with the police being the highest referee of this concern. Due to this, emotional abuse, physical abuse and neglect remains the highest category for children under a care and support protection plan. I was just wondering what sorts of services, are they working closely with the police, considering it's actually not their job to do this as far as the police are concerned. So my question is, I've got another one after this. My question is, What is social service doing alongside the police in respect to all these issues? Anybody to answer that?
Kate, you have your hand up. Did you want to respond to that?
Yes, thank you. Forgive me, my camera's not on at the moment. In relation to domestic abuse, yes, it is the highest referral rate that we have. There's a lot of conflict within obviously family settings, intimate relationships, and indeed sometimes children towards their parents. So there's a whole range of domestic abuse and violence that gets reported in. For the highest risk cases that we encounter, there is a process called a MARAC, which is a multi-agency meeting where housing, the police, probation, social services and support services meet on a regular basis to discuss those families, those households with the most at risk situations of domestic abuse. Clearly, we want to avoid any circumstances that leads to a domestic homicide. So we do take the lessons learned collectively to think about how we can respond to make offers of support at whatever level the victim and children are prepared to accept. So that could lead to, for example, supporting a victim to move into refuge accommodation. It can support victims of domestic abuse to apply for orders that can ensure that their abuser doesn't come within their vicinity. And obviously, if they're already known previously to the police and or probation, then there's certain circumstances, additional steps can be taken, for example, to recall them back to custody if indeed that's an issue for them as well. So there's a lot of discussion that takes place on that multidisciplinary footprint. For the lower level, for the perhaps verbal arguments that we don't want to escalate, it's about advising and supporting the parents or the couple within that household over healthy relationships and supports that may be available to help reduce the stresses. So that might be a referral for financial advice around employment, around behaviour support for their children. So there's a whole range and a whole spectrum really of support that we can offer, and it's targeted in a way which gets the best outcome, which is, as you quite rightly point out, to reduce that conflict and reduce the impact on children, on each other, and indeed upon their neighbours and their community.
Thank you. I always start from the beginning. What is the reason this is happening? You know. So are you looking at the source of the issue prior to anything else?
I think going back to the source, going back to the cause, otherwise we're continually treating the symptoms, aren't we? So there's a whole range of initiatives that are available through the police, through probation, through the NSPCC. There's a whole range of initiatives that are there to work with the victims of abuse. I think it's only probably the past decade that the realisation that it's the perpetrators of abuse, so perpetrator programmes, very much being promoted. And this has indeed been part of the priorities of our regional safeguarding board in relation to understanding the causes of domestic abuse. Quite often it's emotional self-regulation. It's about people not being able to express themselves. It's about, yes, frustrations, it could be mental health, and it's also exacerbated by substance abuse. So they're all causes, but going back to the individual cause for the individual person is really part of the conversation that we would seek to have with them.
Thank you. Just to finish off, if I can conclude, Chair, just a quick question. And I wrote a paper on this to a certain extent a long time ago. I really don't understand when you say communities. I don't know what communities are anymore. You don't have to answer.
Right. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. We've had no other proposals. So on that basis, can somebody move and second that they note the report, that we note the report? Councillor Frank and Councillor Liz, thank you. And can you all show with show of hands that you support that? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, members.
That looks like that's carried. Thank you, members. So now we move on to item 8, which is to consider a report by the Strategic Director of Social Care and Education on the following matters, and that is the Social Services Representations Complaints Complements Annual Report, which can be found on pages 82 to 110. And Simon Griffiths, the team manager for quality standards and commissioning, will present the report. Over to you, Simon.
Good afternoon. Yes, as Councillor Chris said, I'm Simon Griffiths and I manage the complaints team within Conway Social Care. So I'll take you through the report. I'm intending to not go through the whole of the cover report because it's easier to follow, I think, for members within the main report. So I'm just going to skip through bits at the beginning and then take you through a more thorough tour of the main report. Okay, if I can find it. Okay, so yeah, basically the purpose of this report is to provide a review and statistical analysis of the representations, complaints and compliments received by the Conway Social Services Department during the reporting period, which is going back to last year, the 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. So basically, for the recommendations, which is section 2 in the cover report, is that members approve the Social Services Representations, Complaints and Compliments Annual Report for 2021. And then section 4, which is on page 86 of your pack, is the options. So basically, this is an annual complaints report, which is just highlighting activity from the previous reporting year for the attention and consideration of members in line with the statutory duty. Okay, so moving on to the main report. That's going to be section 7 of the main report, which should be page 95 of your packs. I might give you some time to get to there. Okay, so section 7.1 in the main report on page 95. To understand the volume of complaints regarding the average number of cases open to the department, the proportion was 0.15% in integrated adult and community services, which is basically 5 complaints, formal complaints received. And then for children, it's 1.2%, which was 11 complaints received in comparison to approximately 900 people that are open to us at any one time. So in total, we had 16 formal complaints, which were received in the reporting year mentioned. And for the purposes of this report, that is ones that began in the year and ended in the year. Other topics such as interaction with the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales is examined further on in the report. In terms of the financial impact on Conway as an authority, that's mainly in terms of commissioning stage 2 independent investigations. So for 2021, we actually spent a total of £4,710. That is an increase in the previous year, which I'll look at in more detail, and it's also in the cover report. But one thing we did have to pay this year was £300 payments. So as well as the cost of commissioning the independent investigators, sometimes the Ombudsman will also direct us to pay a sum of money to the complainant themselves. So that breakdown of the 300 is basically we have to pay £50 to one complainant due to a delay in starting a stage 2 investigation, which was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the other sum of money, 250, was paid to another complainant for the perceived psychological impact of having to relive events via going through the complaints process. We did allude to this in last year's report, because stage 2s were delayed due to the pandemic. The impact has hit this financial year. And similarly, next year, we've had one that didn't finish until the April, May of this year, which will affect next year's budget. Okay, so moving on to table A1, which should be on page 96 of your pack. And this basically table here basically shows you the trend over time over the last 5 years. And as you can see, we have seen a steady decline. It was quite steady the 3 years previously, but we've seen a further drop this year. And, you know, we're putting that down to the COVID-19 pandemic, really, because obviously people are very busy doing other things and worrying about other things that possibly they didn't have as much time on hands, or they weren't as worried to come and bring complaints forward to us. Moving on to table A2, that's just a breakdown of the complaints received by a stage. So formal complaints have 2 stages. Stage 1 is the local resolution stage, and stage 2 is the independent investigation stage, which I mentioned earlier, and you know, that's where the costs usually come from for our service. We do try and strive to resolve things at stage 1, but that's not always the case, and complainants do have a right to request to go straight to stage 2. So basically in this reporting year, we had a successful resolution with 13 out of 14 of our stage 1 complaints. So only 1 was escalated due to complainants being unhappy at stage 1, and the other one was quite complex and you know, basically, yeah, very complex investigation. So we suggested actually that one went straight to stage 2, so it could have a thorough examining from an independent eye. Table A3 on page 98 of your pack just shows a breakdown of where the formal complaints came from in relation to our various service areas within social care. Again, there's analysis underneath each of the graphs, but basically, usually what we find is we tend to have higher amount of complaints where we've got emotive areas and forward-facing areas, and don't tend to get complaints where we haven't got public-facing functions, such as in our business support team and quality standards and commissioning teams. Moving on to timescales, table A4 on page 99. So basically, of the 14 stage 1 complaints, we have 2 working days to acknowledge the complaints, either formally by letter or via email if the complaint came in via email. And we've managed to do 100% of those in this year. So that was pleasing. 76% of our stage 1 complaints were completed within the 15 working day timescale. So there's a bit more analysis there. So it's a slight dip in performance from last year. We had 87.5% for 1920 within the 15 working day timescale. But last year we were talking about 22 out of 25 complaints, I think it was. So there's a percentage difference there because we're talking about different numbers. But basically for the 3 cases which didn't meet the timescales, we've analysed why that happened. So 2 had actually been resolved successfully within timescale via discussions with the complainant, but unfortunately the formal written response was actually out of timescale. And then another complaint was basically quite a sensitive one, and we needed to interview, the manager investigator needed to interview quite a few members of staff, and unfortunately they were on annual leave when the complaint came in, so that sort of delayed the investigation. But we did sort of communicate with them, and they were happier to ensure that we were looking at it thoroughly. Looking now at table A5 on page 100 of your pack, and that's looking at our stage 2 investigations. So for our independent stage 2 investigations, we have a timescale of 25 working days from when the complaint statement is agreed with the complainant. We only had 2 in the year, and we had 50%. So 1 was in timescale, 1 was not. If you're just looking at the figures, it looks like a very big drop because we only had 1 stage 2 investigation last year. We managed to get that in timescale, but again, it's, you know, with only 2, it has a big impact on the percentage output. So basically, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we'd already had the delay in this one, and then also when it restarted, it's the first time we've working with the new process, because stage 2 investigations are often undertaken at Coed Pecha. Interviews of all the staff members would be done in meeting rooms, which we would organise. The investigator would go out to the home of the complainant. So all these things we had to try and do online, as you know, we're all doing now with these meetings. So we did have a few teething difficulties with IT, around that, which did lead to the delay. Moving on to table A6, this is the source of formal complaints. So as you can see in the table, the majority for the last year was family members raising concerns on behalf of either children or parents, etc. One came through via advocacy, and there's a couple that were self-referred to us. Table A7, the theme of the formal complaints. This isn't a new theme really in terms of where the highest number lies. It's quite often lack of communication or issues with communication that lead to quite the vast majority of complaints. Table A8, which sort of just looks at other demand and complaint activity within the service rather than just the formal complaints that we have to report on based on the regulations. So we have resolved again, which is pleasing, quite a large number of complaints within 24 hours. So that's usually when a representation is received orally on the phone or, well, yeah, on the phone mainly these days. And that's down to the proactive team managers really making sure they ring back to address concerns early. And I think as we've seen over time, if you address concerns early, it stops them escalating further. Moving on to section 7.8 in the report on page 104, that just gives some more information around the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales and our involvement with them. Section 7.12, basically looking over the past 18 months, we've had a total of 5 complaints that have been escalated to the Ombudsman. 2 of those were not investigated once the Ombudsman's office had read through the initial evidence that we provided as a local authority. 2 were successfully resolved at the early resolution stage, and 1 was deemed premature from the Ombudsman's office and was not investigated. Section 7.13 sort of gives you a anonymised overview of the sort of complaints that came in. One thing that I would highlight there is that it does sort of highlight how the Ombudsman can change depending on which officer you get. So in 1, they said that it was very understandable that the stage 2 investigation didn't take place due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and said that, you know, we should, you know, we had a thorough response drafted by our legal department, and the Ombudsman said that would suffice, so they didn't undertake an investigation. And then another one, we were criticised for not undertaking a stage 2 investigation, and the early resolution was to undertake a stage 2 investigation. So it just shows that there's not always they're not always singing from the same hymn sheet within their own office, really. Moving on to compliments, which is section 8 of the report on page 105. For the reporting year, we received a total of 108 compliments. That's 139 for integrated adult and community services and 41 for children, family and safeguarding. Whilst we've seen a slight decline from the previous year, which was 190, it's still good to sort of compare it against the total number of formal complaints, which have come down as well. But 180 compliments in comparison to 16 formal complaints is positive. Table B1 on page 106, and that sort of gives you the breakdown of where the compliments have come in from. 82 for older people in hospital social work, which is very pleasing. Just a few examples below the graphs of the kind of feedback that we do get, which is, you know, pleasing to see. So I won't read those out, I'll let you have a little look over them. Similarly, for children, family and safeguarding services, table B2, the highest there being family support and intervention, which I think is quite, whilst we see quite a high number of, a larger proportion of complaints for this area, we also see a good number of compliments. So it does show that where we do engage with families early and they sort of understand what we're relaying to them, that they do actually appreciate the support that they get in those areas. Again, there's a few examples there of the kind of compliments that we get. Moving on to section 9 in the report, page 108 of your pack. That's just obviously one of the most important things of a complaint service is learning lessons from the complaints that we receive. So again, communication is key. Always important to follow up on agreed actions, ensure that correct information is included when we correspond with citizens. I think we had the example out of pre-filled templates is, someone sent out information without checking that it wasn't, that it was up to date and correct. Make sure that we update people in relation to any updates to their care and support. And a very important one there is making sure that our information is recorded on our electronic information system, which is WCCIS, especially if complaints escalate to stage 2 or the ombudsman. While someone can say they've done something, if we can't evidence it via our systems that it's taken place, that often can be a problem for us. Following up on improvements remain important. So following up on any verbally agreed actions with written confirmation, ensure that departments send any potential complaints to the complaints section, which was kind of an issue in previous years, but as reflected in our 100% acknowledgement, every complaint has actually come through us this year, which is pleasing. In terms of section 10, complaint service improvements, going back to the 2019 audit where we only had satisfactory assurance, the action plan we put in place was still working to and adding to, really. We received high assurance in our follow-up audit, and we're continuing with those sort of lessons that we learned from the audit, really, and keep moving those forward. Just there, we can offer a bilingual service with a Welsh-speaking complaints officer. We have plenty of cover within the management structure for complaints, and also we do get assisted by SPOA when needed. We can put our complaints number through to SPOA, and that also helps us out a great deal when we're dealing with complaints. North Wales regional perspective, which is section 11 at page 109 of your pack. In previous years, we started to do some benchmarking data with our fellow counterparts in North Wales, up until last year when we gave them sight of the information we were sharing, and they weren't very happy with it. And discussions, speaking to my complaints officers, Nia Evans, discussions are that we're not really counting like for like across the North Wales area in terms of timescales, when people, how people are counting things, when they're starting their start dates from. So they're a bit apprehensive to share this year, but I've sent that as a task to Nia to go back to the group to say, well, the guidance is the same for everyone. We need to be all singing from the same hymn sheet and reporting accurately together. So that's something that we need to look at for the following year, basically. They were apprehensive in sharing data this year. Finally, moving on to section 12, some of the key objectives that we want to move forward from a complaints service department. We want to continue to be proactive in resolving complaints within 24 hours. Again, try and resolve things locally where we can as well at stage 1. So we don't have to go to stage 2, and obviously the time and expense that goes into those. Continue to promote effective communication. Trying to reiterate the importance of timescales to managers through our complaints awareness sessions. Another one, we've just moved over to our new system in December of this year. We haven't quite got the reporting mechanisms in place to report complaints as yet, so that's still being done via myself manually via a reporting spreadsheet. So that's something I really want to push forward this year. So our information is going into the system, but we haven't currently got the reports to get the information out to feed into this annual report. And then the other issue or challenge, I suppose, that we've got is to try and make sure that we can get independent investigations moving smoothly electronically. We have got 2 stage 2s starting imminently, which will obviously affect next year's report. But what it has done is opened up the pool of investigators to us, because previously we'd only really look at investigators that were close to the Conway area because the travel costs associated with them, and and having to come and interview people in Pwyllgor. So now, hopefully, with the opening up of the electronic way of doing things, we should be able to have a wider pool of investigators to call upon. I think that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Diolch, Simon. Thank you very much for your report. Right, I'll open up the debate and bring in Councillor Frank Bradfield.
Thank you, Chair. Not It's a very interesting report, and I thank Simon for it, because personally, I love dealing with complaints. And if Conway deals with the complaints properly, you get the compliments to follow. And it's pleasing to see in this report that there's 180 compliments, and for children and safeguarding, there's 41 compliments. And that's a mark of respect that the residents and the families have for the work that the department does. My question, Simon, is 116 complaints. To me, that's very low. I'm sure members can rack that up in a month, but 116 is very low. Is it because the quality of life in Conway is very good, or is it, and I hope it's not, what's the use of complaining? But I would congratulate you on 116 complaints. Is extremely low. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Yeah, well, it's 16 formal complaints, which is low, and it's very hard to tell year on year. But I do think my grasp of it is I don't because this is when the pandemic kicked off, when the reporting year meets. So I think that basically people, were dealing with other things, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the outcome of that, and complaints weren't, on people's minds. We have noticed already this year that complaints have creeped up again, I think, and sometimes off the back of what people have experienced in the pandemic. Particularly, they're not all complaints for social care, but they're coming through us in terms of people being very dissatisfied with visiting care homes, for example, because of the restrictions in place from Welsh Government. I do think we might see a rise now. People are coming out the back of the pandemic for next year.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Frank. Councillor Liz Roberts.
Thank you very much, Simon. Yes, I agree with what you say. We don't know what's around the corner, do we? And it's about not being complacent, which I'm quite sure the department and social care are not being complacent. But I think following on from Councillor Frank's question, it is. I would imagine that people have had other things on their minds. So we'll just have to see what comes about in this next reporting year. But many thanks for all the work you do. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Liz. Are there any further questions?
Yes, please.
Oh, go ahead, Councillor Roger.
Just one, really. My question is, does the authority get many complaints in respect to the private sector when they're looking after older people, etc.? Do you receive an awful lot of complaints in that respect?
We do deal with basically where we have private sector, so say for example care homes or domiciliary care agencies, we do have concerns and complaints that come in that we have to look at in the first instance, because if they come to us, but every care home that's registered under CIW have to have their own complaints procedure, so that is the first port of call. But what we do then is we signpost them and we help them write the letters to the care homes, etc., to make the complaint. We can look at it from a commissioning perspective. We have our monitoring team that goes in, etc. So we can look at concerns that are raised by that route. And also CIW, ultimately the regulators of those care homes, so if the concerns are of a greater nature, CIW have the power to, look into matters in the private providers.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Roger. Are there any further questions? No, right then. In that case, can somebody propose that we note the report, and can I have a seconder? Councillor Liz and Councillor Andrew. Thank you. Can we all please show your hands that you are supportive of noting this report? And can we thank Simon for the excellent quality of the report as well. Thank you. Right, move on to item 8, which is Dinnerthrow Development Programme Progress Report presented by Geraint Williams, the Commercial Transformation Manager. The report can be found on pages 111 to 121 of your paper agenda. And over to you, Geraint.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, as the Chair said, I'm Geraint Williams. I'm the Commercial Transformation Manager working within Corporate Information and Development team, but I'm assigned over to social care to lead on the Dinnerthrow programme. I apologise in advance too. I can see a number of you around the virtual table have probably listened to a couple of updates from me over the last couple of weeks, so you're going to get more of the same again. Apologies, but there are some new faces that I haven't delivered an update to. So just for your benefit, of the report at page 111 will give you some background to the proposal for Dinnerthrow, and at this stage it's important to point out it is just a proposal. We will be subject to lots of approvals processes required. We will be subject to a land transfer, which I'll go through shortly, and of course we will be subject to an awful lot of consultation and engagement. So at this stage it is still a proposal, but what I hope to do today is give you an update. The update to the project can be found from page 118 onwards, and I'm not going to go through it line by line. I'd rather, if I may, Chair, just give the update from my point of view, my perspective, and outline to the committee our next steps in terms of that approval process, where we're taking it next, and certainly around the consultation engagement strategy that we want to start implementing sooner rather than later. The programme itself, the Dinnerthrow Proposal Programme, is split up into 5 work streams. We are currently working on work streams 1, 2 and 3. Work streams 4 and 5 will not progress, certainly not until we have the approvals in place and we've completed work streams 1, 2 and 3. Workstream 1 is all around securing the land from Dinnerthrow. So many months ago, if not a couple of years ago, prior to me joining the programme, a desktop exercise was undertaken by colleagues in estates, and Dinnerthrow identified as a preferred solution to deliver some real benefits to the area in terms of outcomes and strategic goals of our public bodies involved in this programme. So that's ourselves, that's Betsy Cadwallader, and that's group Alexandra Menai, the college. So yeah, so the Dinnerthrow was identified, and obviously Dinnerthrow is in the hands, it's owned by Welsh Government. We used to occupy it by way of a lease con, we used to occupy it. We had a number of services being delivered from there. And then once Coy Petler had been completed in the centre of Colwyn Bay, obviously we left Dinnerthrow, and since then that's been lain vacant whilst Welsh Government take a decision on what to do with it. This site was identified as a preferred site for the Dinnerthrow programme. Discussions have been pretty much ongoing with Welsh Government since around, I'd probably say 2018, early 2019, and they've been really complex and long negotiations. However, over the course of probably say the last month and a half now, 2 months, there's been some real progress and some real commitment from Welsh Government colleagues in terms of transferring the land to us. Now, obviously, all of that uncertainty around the land has given rise to us not quite communicating as much as we'd like to, because unless we've got security of that land, then clearly we're not going to do much in terms of communication until we know that land is secure and in our remit and we're able to deliver that proposal. So, as I said, negotiation with Welsh Government has been much progressed, I'd say, over the last month or so, to a point where we've been able to send them some draft heads of terms for the transfer over to us. Those draft heads of terms are currently sitting with Welsh Government and their consultants. They're just reviewing those. We're hopeful that we will hear back from them within the next week or two. Once we do, we will then be preparing a report which will go through the usual democratic process to secure that land. That report will be subject to, we're hoping to go to Cabinet, I think, November, and then Council during December. That report will be subject to, however, a number of surveys which we will undertake on the site. Probably one of the most important surveys we'll undertake is a ground investigation survey, because we need to be absolutely sure that the ground is safe, it's secure, it can take a development on there. So we will not sign on the dot. We'll seek approval from our local democracy to secure the land, but we will not sign anything with Welsh Government until we have satisfactory receipt of the reports from these surveys, as I said. And then at only that point will any contracts be exchanged. We might need to, depending on how the negotiations on the heads of terms with Welsh Government are doing, we might need to just flip what I've just told you there in terms of doing the ground investigations after we've got the cabinet approved. Therefore, just because we need to be able to meet committee and dates in terms of submitting reports. But at this moment in time, the proposal is that we take a report through democracy, as I say, in November. And we then do, once we get the sufficient approvals, fingers crossed, we will then do those surveys. We would then look to do the final completion and actually exchange contracts before the end of the financial year, so sometime in March 2022. In addition, we've just in terms of that piece of land, it's fairly close to Bryn Eirin. And because of that, we were advised that we should just speak with colleagues in Cadw and with colleagues at the Clwyd Powys Archaeological Trust. We've undertaken those discussions with both Cadw and Clwyd Powys, both of whom don't have any interest in the site. They don't foresee any issues with the site, and therefore have confirmed that they would have no issues with some form of development going on there. They would obviously be keen to see, once any relevant approvals are received, what is going on the site. And then finally, just in terms of that work stream one, that land transfer, we've had very early discussions with our strategic director of finance resources just to understand what potential funding routes there could be for the land transfer. Interestingly, in the last couple of weeks or so, there is the potential of potential only, and I'm not going to say it's confirmed, but we're just working with colleagues in housing at the moment. There's a potential for some external, possibly some external funding for the land transfer, which we're exploring now. So that also obviously will form part of the report. Clearly, as we are now making, or got a little bit more certainty around that land transfer, we need to start thinking about our communication and engagement, particularly with our local members, with staff, and obviously with local residents and then the wider community. And I suppose that kind of leads us, therefore, into work stream 2. So work stream 2 was just wondering between ourselves, between us, Conway, and our partners, the art of the possible. What is it we'd like to see on that site in terms of a specification, an extra care housing scheme, a small office similar to that at Thirst Uvrig, where we currently have an extra care housing scheme with a small office, similar, something like that, which we could support people to still live independently, some of our elderly community to live independently, and have some of the service delivery people from both the council and Betsy on site in an office there as well. So we've just been working up some proposals for that. They're very, very high level. There's nothing detailed, because clearly for detailed, we'd firstly have to have the land secured, we'd have to have somebody to build it for us, and we'd have to go through the proper planning process. We're some way off that yet. So what we've done is just develop some very high level technical specifications, just so that we could get a rough idea of what that might cost us. That then will form a business case, and there will be 2 business cases submitted as part of this project. One business case will be submitted by Betsy Cadwallader colleagues. That will be a revenue business case, so that they can secure revenue to be able to pay for the ongoing costs of their parts of the development. There will also need to be a capital business case submitted by Conway. This kind of now almost leads into work stream 3, which is procuring a development or a construction partner. So before we can procure a development or construction partner, we need to understand what routes are open to us, what construction and procurement routes are open to us as a partnership, really, going forward. And until we have these confirmed and properly costed, again, we've not been able to really engage quite widely on this, because we've needed to understand ourselves what the costs are. And that all depends on what kind of commercial or procurement route that we go down. There are roughly 4 options open to us, 3 of them very similar in terms of kind of securing a development partner who will pay for the whole thing, and we will lease back our relevant parts. So Conway would lease back their part, a registered social landlord would lease back parts of for the extra care housing, and Betsy Cadwallader would lease back their parts of the developments as well. So that's take the lead on behalf of the partnership and procure a construction partner ourselves, and we build ourselves, and then we lease back those relevant parts to our partners. So we've instructed an external property consultant to be able to develop those options for us. Now, I think in the report on I forget which page, I think starting on page 118, but within that report, we hope to bring that paper to the programme board at the end of September. Unfortunately, due to annual leave and due to some illness within our external support partners, they were unable to produce the report in time. That is promised at a meeting next, I want to say Tuesday, next Tuesday. And so we will then share it with the programme board, and that will then form the development of a report through the usual democratic process again, as well as forming parts of the business case process that exists within Conway, certainly for the capital case. Due to the way that Betsy Cadwallader run their business case approval process, there is a very need, starting I think towards the end of this month, we will need to engage, or they will to engage with and communicate more with not only local members, but with members of the health board and with local residents and the community. So with that in mind, and now that we've got a little bit more certainty around the land issue, we feel now is the appropriate time to really finalise our engagement plan and start to kind of implement that, as I say, across the board at Conway, across the board at BCHB, and then with local residents and with the wider community. I have a meeting tomorrow, tomorrow with Betsy Cadwallader colleagues to have a look at their draft plan for their business case. That will then formulate itself into a programme engagement plan. The proposal is to share that with the programme board. And then we will hopefully get approval for that engagement plan, and we can start some proper communication engagement with our colleagues and with members and with the public. I suppose if we've got the relevant approvals for the land transfer, if we get the relevant approvals for the procurement process, we would anticipate, depending on which procurement route we go down, we would then need at least another 12 months to procure either a development partner or a construction partner, depending on which route we go down. That would take at least 12 months. Once they're appointed after that 12 months, they would obviously need to refine any kind of plans. That will obviously need further engagement, certainly through the planning process, and then clearly they would need to go through the planning process. So I suppose what I'm trying to say to you is certainly from end of October and early November onwards, we'll start to see an awful lot of engagement and consultation. You're not going to see an awful lot of detail, unfortunately, because as we say, that is some time away. This is a large development. It's an exciting development, but it's one we need to do properly. And to do it properly, we need to make sure we follow the correct routes, and we need to make sure we're doing the correct engagement and consultation. Before I leave that business case discussion, I just want to say, in terms of the Conway business case, the capital business case, we will be looking at that to be unsupported borrowing, unsupported in that the element that we will have to pay back, i.e. the Conway, will be unsupported. That is, we will look to fund it from existing revenue sources. We're also seeking external grant funding as well as part of that capital business case. All of this will hopefully become an awful lot more clearer once we receive the final report from our external property consultants next week, and then we can report that through the relevant channels. Before I take any questions, I can just give you a very swift update on our proposed forward work programme. Clearly, our main kind of main intentions over the coming months are to, one, secure the land, two, to take the business cases, both Betsy Cadwallader and ourselves, Conway, take them through our relevant governance processes. Thirdly, we obviously need to start that communication and engagement, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. some significant communication engagement in a previous role and really enjoyed it. You get some interesting conversations going on, and that'll be good, really good, because it really is an exciting opportunity. One thing I haven't mentioned, I haven't updated colleagues on for a while, is some of the training and work opportunities that this development will bring. We are working with our colleagues at Group Llanrwst on developing a whole suite of training and work opportunities, and that is, once we get approval, let's fingers crossed, we'll get approval for the programme. During the construction, there are opportunities for us to include a social value programme within the procurement process. Within that social value programme, during the construction, we will ask any developer who wishes to submit a bid, or any construction partner who wishes to submit a bid, they must outline in their bid what they're going to do to engage with small and medium enterprises in the local area, what opportunities they're going to give to utilise local labour, what provision of apprenticeships are they going to provide, any local training schemes are they going to do, what community engagement can they do, so are there any side works they can do as part of the development to help the community, certainly some of the local shops or anything around in the local area that could benefit from any community engagement. So we're working with colleagues both internally and with colleagues at Group Menai Llandrillo on some form of social value as part of the procurement. Once the development is built, let's, fingers crossed, we will get that approval. Once the development is built, there are a whole host of opportunities then for further education and higher education students at the site. So that'll be a number of training and work opportunities for residents of the extra care housing scheme. They can work with residents there. There'll be opportunities to do intergenerational activities, volunteering schemes that we could undertake for college students. We could also ask some of the higher education students as well to perhaps undertake any research surveys that we'd like to do and things like that. So some massive opportunities, and we're working with, as I say, Group Menai Llandrillo just on working up a paper to round off what those opportunities and training work schemes might look like. So lots going on. Really exciting. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'm conscious of time because I know that the agenda's running late and we want to allow time for questions. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of where we're at. Just to round off, again, we are subject to a number of approvals. We're subject to lots of things that are not yet certain. We're starting to get that certainty, however. And just to assure you that myself and colleagues from Betsy and from the college, we're working hard to make sure that this happens because we appreciate it. It's something that our colleagues elsewhere want to see happen. Thank you.
Councillor Chris, you're on mute.
Sorry, I can unmute then. Right, I'll bring Councillor Liz in to open a debate and then Councillor James.
Thank you very much indeed, Geraint. And I'm so pleased that Welsh Government finally, at long last, fingers crossed.
I hope I haven't jinxed it.
Are getting there, because I've been so looking forward to this development, because it is a unique development. There isn't another one anywhere else. And I think it is highly exciting. And what just crossed my mind now was, when you're talking about engagement, I think it'd be really good, or maybe it's something you've already thought of, or the team's thought of, is that Coleg Menai students could go to our extra care housing and talk to residents and share with them, this new kind of development as an add-on to what's already there, and to gauge their thoughts and what they'd like to see happen, so that we're listening to the voice of the community once again. And I think that would be an ideal opportunity, and it would help in the research, any research that would be carried out by Coleg Llandrillo students as well. So I look forward to the day of the opening. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Liz. Councillor James.
Thanks, Chair. Diolch yn fawr iawn. And big thank you to Geraint for the whistle stop tour there. I'm part of the programme board, and I know colleagues in Conway and all the other partners are working extremely hard behind the scenes. And as Councillor Liz has already said, finally, Welsh Government getting there with this, and that is exciting news for us. And it's an exciting opportunity for us as Conway, as you know, this is no other place like it going to be in Ross-on-Sea, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen and how it's going to develop for all the training opportunities. And now I'm getting excited more and more for consultation locally as well, to hear what local residents have to say, and I know that's going to be coming up as well soon rather than later. And but massively, my main point is to say a very big thank you to Geraint today, and to everyone that's involved, all partners, because this is quite significant for not just for Ross-on-Sea, but for Conway Council, which is wonderful. So thank you very much indeed, and hopefully we'll all get approval sooner rather than later as well. So diolch yn fawr iawn.
Next, we have Councillor Roger Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Clarification, if I may. 5, it says bespoke local provision to meet the additional learning needs of young adults with complex needs. Are they residential, these young people with complex needs? Where are they coming from, please?
Not wanting to throw Ramona. I just noticed Ramona's on the call as well, because she's laughing now. Sorry, Ramona. Probably Ramona best placed to answer that one, Councillor Parry. So if I could just hand over to Ramona.
Yeah,
thank you, Ramona.
That's fine. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, this is part of the development is around our response to development of the Additional Learning Needs Act and the need to develop local provision to meet the education needs of young people with learning disabilities, complex needs up to the age of 25. So people will be living at home with their families, and they'll be able to access the education provision that we will develop. We will partner with Cymdeithasol College to provide. We're already doing that in Cynolfa Mawr. So part of the provision will be a bespoke development, so that the provision in Cynolfa Mawr that's been delivered in partnership with Cymdeithasol can move to this more bespoke, purpose-built provision. And also there'll be then additional capacity there as well. And we will be able to provide overnight, it's not really respite, but an extracurricular in terms of developing people's independent living skills. Because lots of people say, oh, you know, Cymdeithasol can't meet the needs of the young person who wants to learn independent living skills because they don't have the overnight provision, whereas out-of-county specialist residential colleges can. So this offer will provide that aspect of the individual's learning needs. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes, but my question, these people will be living in a home rather than at this complex.
Yes, they're living at home,
yeah. I've got a couple of questions, if I may ask, in respect of the four, i.e. health, RSAs, education, Conway. Those are the 4 working together. Is there a risk in is there a risk in respect of possibly 2 of these individuals opting out for some reason in the future? And if so, what can you do about it?
Thanks, Councillor Parry. I can answer that question. The Betsy Cadwaladr, the college, and ourselves, Conway, have entered into a collaboration agreement. That collaboration agreement has been signed, Councillor Parry. So all 3 are committed to delivering, obviously subject to all the relevant approvals. But yes, collaboration agreement has been signed. Once we have the approvals in place and we are ready to start to look for an RSL, the collaboration agreement will be amended to include the RSL as well.
Oh, thank you for that. And the other question is, I'm surmising that that land's going to cost an awful lot of money. I don't know, it could, the way it's going now, it could cost you 2 million plus, I don't know, but thereabouts. Is the council going to pay for that money initially? Pay for the land? Will the council have to pay for the land before anything else?
It's well, probably a little bit less, though, quite a bit less than those figures. We're just waiting for the district valuer to provide an independent valuation on behalf of both us and Welsh Government. But the land is subject to some affordable housing, which makes it a little bit more affordable in terms of the purchase. So the exact figure yet to be determined, but we would not expect it to be in the region of £2 million or anywhere near. We've had the early discussions in terms of the funding of that with the Strategic Director of Finance. We need to revisit those discussions. I think it's fair to say Amanda had some ideas. Since that discussion with Amanda, there has been, as I mentioned in my update, there has been some talk of an opportunity for some external funding. We're just progressing that with some of the colleagues at this moment in time. So we may, fingers crossed, get some external funding for the actual land purchase. Claire, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that one. I think that covers.
No, that covers it really well, Garrett. Sorry, I realised my camera wasn't working. I was busy waving before. No, that's fine. I think you've covered it. Hopefully, it won't be too expensive. That's the plan.
So these units, there's 50 units.
Can I just come in? Sorry, Chair. Councillor Roger, can I just remind you that you have declared an interest in this previously? So I've
already.
You have, yes. And
just now, I've done it now as well.
Yeah. So just be careful where your line of questioning is going, because you've had to leave on previous occasions. I realise this is only an update, so I can just advise you that you keep your questioning to generic, maybe. So
what does that mean? What does about
in line with the report, on the update on the report?
Well, I'm only asking these questions because I've actually been around some of these houses round about close by.
Yeah, but you do live in the vicinity, so can I just like you said, that's my advice. So
well, the people I've spoken to, Dawn, up until now, are not happy about this, as you might guess. So I'm just letting people know. So you've got an uphill struggle here. Thank you. Okay, I'll finish now.
Thank you, Councillor Roger. Can I bring in Claire Higgins at this stage?
Yeah, I was just going to say to Councillor Parry, in terms of the consultation, Garrett's just updated the committee in respect to the fact that we will be undertaking some consultation now. I think unfortunately that has been delayed. I'm really excited about this project, and I think that it will be a huge benefit to the area. And I think that once we are able to openly discuss what we're planning, I am hoping that any concerns that have been voiced so far will be diminished by the positivity that we'll be able to bring about, because it's an exciting project that is most definitely needed in Conway and for the residents of that particular area.
Just like to say I'm committed to my residents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Roger. And I acknowledge that you are an extremely active councillor and extremely supportive of your residents. However, there is the issue that it does affect you, and I've been in the same position where residents have lobbied me over issues and I've not been able to speak, and I've had to leave the meeting. So I have some sympathy with you, but we are where we are. Right, are there any other questions on Geraint's report? Councillor Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for Geraint, really. He did say that before signing an agreement, we would be seeking or we would be having a land survey done. And I just wondered what assurities we will be seeking from the company that will be making that survey. My other question is, in light of construction companies going out of business locally recently, if we're going to have a construction partner, what I don't know, what sort of due diligence will we be taking or making when selecting a partner? Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Nigel. Just to give you an idea in terms of firstly the due diligence on the site, we're looking at around about 5 surveys we think we need to undertake, Councillor Smith. So that would be the big one is the ground investigation survey. Then we've got things like radon assessments. We've got the usual biodiversity and ecology surveys we'd expect to be undertaken. We need to undertake an asbestos survey on the current buildings that are on site, and then finally, and another key one is a drainage assessment. So in terms of procuring contractors to undertake those surveys, clearly we will only be going to qualified contractors and consultants to undertake those for us. We will clearly take advice from our legal colleagues when it comes to signing any contract with a successful consultant of what guarantees we're going to get after that in terms of what information they provide. Clearly, they're the experts. I've got a meeting next week actually with our ERF colleagues just to start that process of understanding who is out there, what kind of guarantees we should be asking certainly as part of the successful consultant. In terms of a construction partner or even a development partner, yeah, I mean, I've been subject to it. I'm helping colleagues on the Bwthyn Oddol, the Meadow Lodge project, and we had the contractor there go into administration, and it was a really difficult time. We will ensure that whatever route we use for that procurement, whether it be via a development framework, whether it's via a construction framework or a regional procurement framework, or even an open tender, we will ensure that the relevant checks as part of the procurement process, whether they are financial checks, whether they are company checks in terms of whether they've got any court proceedings against them, are written in, and they will have to declare those. So depending on what route we take, procurement route we take now, that will be either as part of the pre-procurement questionnaire, so like a PPQ that will go out before we start the full procurement, where we will ask. There's always that danger, isn't there, that we appoint somebody and then something happens. That's a really difficult one, because hindsight would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it? But as long as we've done as much as we can working with our finance and audit colleagues, I think as long as we've done as many of those checks that I think you're alluding to as possible, and we've done as much as we can to protect ourselves, then should anything happen following the appointment of a contractor, at least we've safeguarded ourselves, and we can hopefully evidence that we went through the correct route.
Thank you very much for that, Simon. And I do agree with Councillor Liz and Claire that this is a very exciting development for Conway, and it will certainly most definitely benefit our residents. So yeah, crack on. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. I see no further hands up. And there have been no recommendations made. So can we, on that basis, have a proposer and seconder that we note the update? Councillor Liz and Councillor James, thank you. And can you all please show that you're supportive of noting the report? Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Right, item 9. Item 9 is the exempt item, which can be found on pages 121 to 123. I need to ask for a proposer and seconder to agree that we go into committee to discuss this item. That's proposed by James, seconded by Councillor Liz. And can you all show your hands that you're supportive of the proposal? Thank you. Can we